Welcome back once again to your favorite St. Louis sports podcast, The Lounatics. I'm your host, Tyler, along with my friend and co-host, John, back for another exciting episode for another fun-filled week of St. Louis sports. And I guess you could say exciting and fun-filled in some regards, and for other sports, maybe less so. We'll start with the less fun topics. How about those Cardinals?
Wow, when you say less fun, you mean zero fun. Zero fun, sir.
Yeah. Do you mean you would like to have no fun?
Yes, no fun. It's making me think of that scene from Remember the Titans where Denzel is like, "It's not fun anymore, is it?" I'm like, no, it is not. It is not fun anymore. I agree with everything being said right now. But I did have a question for you for the Cardinals, but go into it because I can bring this up at any point.
Yeah, so there's a couple of things just to be aware of. And again, we're getting ready, spoiler alert for our next episode as we do more of a Cardinals deep dive on their ineptness and what they can/won't do. So a couple of things. Continue to just say, we don't give a shit and we don't really care to go all in and do a youth movement. And we're just going to let these guys come back who have legitimately proven that they have nothing to donate or to truly give to this team to help them grow in any way. I'm looking at you, Lance Lynn, Miles Michaelis.
It's exactly who I was thinking of. And I love those guys, but like they're not helping the team.
I do,
right now.
But they're not. And you've only got 20 games, left in the season, and you could legitimately be letting some of these young guys, Michael McGreevy, get a few extra starts at the big league level to kind of preview what you might have for next year. And instead, we're, just going to keep rolling the same big guys out. It's just disappointing, tough to watch. There's a lot of words I could use. The other thing that was exciting on one hand and less exciting on the other, hold on one second. Sorry, is that they called up Sagasy, who is our number 4 prospect in the Cardinals organization. But to do so, rather than say, hey, you know what, it's the end of the season, the minor league season's coming to an end, we went ahead and sent down Victor Scott II back to the minors. And I get that to an extent of, hey, we're going to send him back down. We have, a better current option at center field. But it's just, you have these old guys that aren't really contributing to the team. So rather than, maybe DFA somebody or move on, it's just, we're just going to keep cycling through our young guys and wasting another option of sending somebody down.
Right. So, I mean, the first thing to say is, so we activated Lance Lynn yesterday, got the start tonight, did not get the win, although the Cardinals did win. Do you think Lance Lynn is, because I believe we have an option to retain him. And do you think that they exercise that option to keep him in the rotation next year?
I think they're hinting that they want to.
Yeah.
Which I think is a mistake.
Sorry, I was looking at our software gave me an alert because I was messing with the cords from my microphone. Yeah, I think that they probably are, and I don't know how I feel about that. I mean, his season stats are actually kind of right around what I thought they would be. So I can't really say he's underperformed, but it's just like, okay, at some point we have to accept if our young guys are able to do this or not. And we really should probably be playing them right now, like you said. And I'm not just talking about Walker or Sagasay. I'm talking about the pitchers, like you mentioned. Like, okay, we're going to give some of these guys a chance in spring training next year, or at least they're going to be invited. Like, why not give them a chance right now against real major league hitters and see what they can do? You're going to learn so much more about them than you will at spring training.
Oh, yeah. No, for sure. And you have these options, but they're not. Again, you have opportunities, and it goes back to we look at the Blues, and I feel like, yeah, the Blues are struggling, but they've more or less announced, like, hey, we're going through this youth movement and we're going to commit to this.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a little bit easier to stomach some of the losing or the frustration, knowing, like, hey, this is going to be a short-term ordeal. But you feel like with the Cardinals that it's just going to continue to be an ongoing issue. And I don't foresee that changing in any way, shape, or form anytime soon.
No, absolutely not. The thing about the Cardinals is that they're trying to think of the future while they think of the now, right? And they're failing at both, right? It's what was it that Ron Swanson said? Don't half-ass two things, whole-ass one thing, right?
Yes.
That's basically what the Cardinals need to do and what they are not doing.
Yeah, they need a whole ass something.
Yes. One thing. One thing. Whole-ass one thing.
So, again, I'm not sure. You're right. Like I said, I don't know where it goes from here. But it just doesn't give me high hopes, high motivation, or excitement going into next season, knowing that they're kind of giving us the idea that what you see is what you're going to get next year.
And not only that, but like I feel like we essentially wasted another option on Victor Scott, right? Just kind of like we did with Walker last month. So it's not just the fact that we're not really consistently playing some of these young guys. It's that there just seems to be no plan. There's no like grand scheme. It just seems like we're making it up as we go. And for this organization, like this organization was always known for being organized, for having a plan, for always having the next answer ready. And it's become a trend that we are not that way anymore.
Yeah, no, I would. I mean, I agree, but what are you going to do other than, just hope that Mo gets a new bow tie and magically fixes something?
I mean, I would buy a bunch of bow ties for the guy if that's all it took. That
Okay,
being said,
let's
he
be
makes
honest,
a ton
though.
of money, so like he can buy
Yeah,
his own
he can
damn
buy
bow
his
tie.
own bow ties. Yeah, I've had that exact thought. I'm like, that guy makes more than enough money to buy his own bow ties. Hold up. Uh, and yeah, so I had a interesting question, and it's a good segue from the Cardinals here.
Okay.
So with the Cardinals having back-to-back struggling seasons, obviously we know the Rams have moved on. The Battlehawks are a big deal, but again, the Battlehawks will never be the NFL. How important do you think that makes Mizzou football last year and this year? How much bigger of a focus does that put on Mizzou football for the St. Louis sports community?
I mean, I think it does and it doesn't, right? I mean, I don't feel like in St. Louis, I don't feel like there's like Mizzou football diehards the way there's like Alabama diehards, right? Or Auburn or those some of those schools, but and I don't know, and it would be different also if Mizzou was in St. Louis, right? Like obviously,
Mm-hmm.
tons of people in St. Louis like prefer Mizzou as their college football team. You know, a ton of people in the area went there or grew up near there, grew up rooting for the Tigers. Um, we obviously cover it because we are that way. We fall in that boat, but I don't know. It does seem to be exciting to a lot of people beyond just us, though, in the St. Louis sports scene. Like I follow a bunch of the other pages that cover City or the Cardinals or the Blues, and I mean, I'm seeing a lot of chatter from guys that are really or girls that are really focused on those sports. Also talking about Mizzou football. So I think it is probably important to a lot of people. Um, I don't know if it for the general sports scene in St. Louis, I don't know if it really registers that terribly much yet.
Yep. I just feel with the struggles that we've had, I think there is a lot of Mizzou fans in the St. Louis area. But I think more than that, because Cardinals have struggled, because the Blues last few years have not been, the Blues of the 10 years previous, it's really opened the door or really been given the opportunity for Mizzou to really capitalize on having a great and winning program last year, and then leading into this year, and again, starting off the way they have so far, granted against lesser teams, but they more or less did what you'd expect them to do.
I mean, yeah, let me put it another way. I think that what City did last year was more meaningful to St. Louis sports fans. And I know that City kind of finds themselves in the same situation as far as the playoffs go as the Cardinals do, but the vibe around the team could not be more different. And I guess maybe that's where I'm getting that sense of that same sense that you're talking about with Mizzou football that I'm getting. And I mean, like, I am super excited about what is happening at Mizzou the last year and this year, and where that team is looking like it's headed. Um, but that's just me.
Yeah, no, I get that, and again, I agree. I think if it were an actual St. Louis-based team, it would be that much bigger. But I definitely think it's put a larger focus on them, and with City having a down year this year, we know that has been, we've talked about it a lot, and then again, but you look at the vibe around City or the vibe around the Blues versus the vibe around the Cardinals, right? Going into this season, we wanted to be very optimistic about the Cardinals, but I mean, how often did we talk, joke about the rotation is not like, yes, it's better,
good.
like, but it's not going to hold up, and we saw that as the season progressed.
Let me ask
now you look
this.
at City making changes, and they're, you have Lutz, who's essentially their Mo, making changes and being active, and he's, making these changes. He's pushing. He's not afraid to move the envelope, no matter who the players are that he has to move in order to make that happen. And you kind of have the same kind of thing with Army, where Army's not scared to do the big things. And because of the two of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that that's also the thing. And I mean, granted, there have been complaints for years about Army and the decisions that he's made. And I'm sure at some point we will question decisions that Lutz has made. It's just right now he seems to always hit. And when he misses, he's he's in and out fast, right?
That's what she said.
That son of a gun. Yes. But like, no, and maybe this is driven by ownership, but like, okay, you have to imagine that there is a budget, right, that ownership gives him, and he knows how much that budget is. And there have been times where it's like, okay, surely you can get creative with that much money, right? And when they've given out money, they've given it out to players who then underperformed like immediately, right? Like immediately underperformed. And I mean, we've had one or two really good years for Michaelis since we signed him, but generally he's probably not really lived up to what we've paid him. And I love the guy. Miles Michaelis is a whole ass vibe when it comes to the St. Louis Cardinals. Same thing with Lance Lynn. But like, this is also a business. It also, like, we want to win, and if we're only going to spend so much money, that money needs to be spent right.
Yeah. And again, yeah. And if you're going to make, we've talked about it before, but you really got to commit one way or the other if you're the Cardinals. I want to hop back to Mizzou for a minute. So, you talked, I know you mentioned you wanted to talk a lot about Mizzou and kind of where they were at. We did mention last week when they played their first game of the season against Murray State. They did what you'd expect them to do, but they kind of went up big, and you could tell their foot came off the gas. This last week, they played Buffalo. And how did you feel with the Buffalo game? Because there was some good things and then some incredibly concerning things for me.
Right. So I stopped watching at the end of the third. And at the time, Mizzou was up 31-0, and I think they ended up winning like 38-0. They didn't. I know that it was a shutout, but I think they ended up with 38 points. And I remember thinking when I shut that off to start the City game, um, that has got to be one of the worst 31-0 leads I have ever seen. And I thought some of the things that I thought they did really well, I thought they did really well with the short and medium passing. I think they're very efficient with the play calling and the decision making that Brady makes on those short to medium throws. I think Carroll especially looks like a man among boys when he gets the ball out there. I thought our defense played really, really well again against inferior competition, but you can only play who's on the other side of the field. Um, but what I was really upset about was two things. One, I am still concerned about Brady Cook's ability to complete deeper throws. And I don't know if it's decision making. I don't know if it's just placing the ball in the right spot for those longer throws. But I am concerned that when we play teams with a decent defensive backfield, that we could be punished pretty bad on some of these throws that he's made. Uh, there's still time to figure that out, but I don't know if it's an ability thing or if it's just still working out the kinks. The other thing, and I think that this should improve, is I feel like Mizzou, especially on offense and especially along the offensive line, made a ton of just bad penalties, just just horrible fouls like that are just mental mistakes. And it obviously didn't hurt us, but I saw a lot of it in both games. Bad holdings, a couple of face masks, like just things that we can easily avoid. And if we get this out of our system now and we figure it out, that's great. But we now have a ranked opponent this week. We have in Boston College. Boston College is a team that has been very surprising so far this year, and they could take it to us. I don't think we are so much better than that Boston College team that our talent will win us this game. I think Mizzou will win it, but it's not going to be just solely based on talent.
Yeah, I think going into the season, a lot of us felt like, oh yeah, Boston College will be like a good, easy tune-up, but a good test, but still tune-up. And that has very quickly gone from, oh, I think this is going to be a good tune-up to they're going to come at you and you better be ready, because if you don't hit them in the mouth, they're sure as heck going to hit you in the mouth.
Yes. And they're very well coached with Bill O'Brien out there, right?
Yes.
Like Bill O'Brien's teams, as far as like the coaching goes, have always been coached very well. Now, as a GM in the NFL, not so good, but as a coach, exceptional.
Yes. No, I agree with that. Again, I am excited for the game, but also incredibly nervous for the game this against Florida State, or against Boston College. I said Florida State because I still have Florida State on the brain with how well their season has started.
Right. I do think one thing that I did really appreciate, and this can help open up some of the passing plays the more he shows this off. Brady Cook looked more mobile than I guess I thought of him as, at least against Buffalo. And if he's able to move and even not get some of the rushes that he did, but even if he can just scramble, like that's going to open up your receivers just by moving. So that can also be something that helps out a lot later in the year. Or he can just keep running and getting touchdowns that way. Not going to complain.
I think he's always been deceptively mobile.
Right.
I think if you watch
deceptively mobile, yeah, I think that's a good way to describe it. Yeah.
I think if you watch even last year, right, when times they ran, read options of different sorts, he was always, an option. He always had the option to take it, and when he did, he'd move for some yards. And I think the other thing with him is when he does keep the ball or does decide to run the ball, he usually does so knowing this is how far I'm going to go, or this is my target. I'm going to get there and go down. Like he's never trying to do too much when he runs, and I think that really helps him a lot.
Oh, yeah, and that's a problem that a lot of quarterbacks have, especially quarterbacks who are run first. They think, okay, I need to fight through this tackle. I need to keep getting yards. And, like, that's when your quarterbacks get hurt. Like, a lot of quarterbacks don't really have the muscle mass to protect themselves from taking some of these hits. And even the running backs, it will really tear them up too. Uh, but yeah, I think he does slide really well. And did you see that jump that he did, the hurdle for the touchdown? That was insane.
Yeah, I think you forget how crazy all of these guys are as athletes when you don't
Right.
see some of the things they do.
Right.
And so that's always a fun one to remember.
Mm-hmm.
There's very few guys that are rolling out on a Division I football field anymore that move like Tom Brady or Peyton Manning.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you stop and you think about, like, okay, so Mizzou, number 6 team in the country, naturally all the guys on that team are going to be phenomenal athletes. And then you think about how far away the athletes for Buffalo are from like your own athletic ability, and they're getting blown out. And then it just makes you feel really, really bad about, how good you are as an athlete.
You mean the part that I'm not really an athlete anymore, even if I want to think I am? Yeah.
Yes, exactly that.
Speaking of not being an athlete anymore, do what always makes me feel like, hot garbage is watching a City game and they start putting on how many miles Durkins ran.
Oh, I know, but Betcher is like right behind him. When they put that up, Betcher was like right there with them, and that was surprising to me. Yeah, like people talk about like soccer being an easy sport or a wimpy sport or whatever, and I'm like, man, there are guys. Tyler Adams is one, and Dirk is another, who are running 8 miles in sprints in 90 minutes. Like that is insane. Like, oh my gosh. I would be very interested in seeing like Luther Burden, like his total distance traveled in a game.
Yeah, I feel like they don't track that as much in football, but it would be really interesting to know.
That's what I mean. Like they don't track that, but like I want to know that. Like
I assume he's running deep a lot.
yes, and
even if it's just to pull defenders that way to open something else up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, to you don't have to block the corner if you can just run and get them to cover you and
turn.
And
yeah, if you can get them to turn their back, if you can get them to turn their back to the play, you've done your job. You've opened a hole.
Yeah. And then after I see Luther Burden's, I want to see Travis Hunter's. I really want to know how much ground Travis Hunter has covered in any of these games.
Well, he doesn't play that many snaps.
Yeah. If by play you mean he doesn't miss many snaps. He missed like 3 snaps last week. Yeah, right.
For those of you who don't know, Travis Hunter plays for the Colorado Buffaloes and plays both offense, defense, and special teams.
Yes. He is the only actually cool thing about that team. Like the only legit thing on that team. And I love Prime, but like that team is so overhyped other than Travis Hunter.
Yeah. I think it's good for college football to have that. Though.
Yes. You're not wrong there. Just like it's good for college football that FSU, drops their first 2 games.
It is. And honestly, it was really good for the college football playoff committee. It just validated that they made the right choice last year.
Yes. That team, like, I'm still kind of amazed at these games that they've lost, but we're not an FSU focused podcast, so we don't need to dive into that.
No. So back to City, which was where my initial transition was there with the Durkin running. But we derailed ourselves because we're good at that.
That's what we do.
Yeah. I mean, if there's nobody else to derail us, that's fine because we can do it ourselves.
That's right. Yeah, we don't need any help.
So City played first couple games back after League's Cup break. How do you feel after our last couple of results?
I mean, this season is done, right? I know it's not mathematically over, and like there's still a chance, but like
it was more or less done unless we came out and won like 6 straight.
Right. Let me put it to you this way though. As far as how I feel about the way this team has played, is I feel like this team, it reminds me more of how I felt about the way this team was playing before the LAFC game. And the season turned in that LAFC game. In fact, I think the season turned on Marcanic's second yellow in that game, specifically. Specifically that second yellow. It felt like that changed our whole effing season because that's when it all went to crap. Like, I feel like we've been not, competitive in games and not just like scrambling to like just like hold the lead and not lose. Like it really felt like there in the summer, or even just like trying to keep up when the other teams are just blowing us out. The problem is that we lost too many points over the summer in the middle of all the injuries and all the other stuff that was going on, and now it's
waiting for reinforcements.
Right, waiting for reinforcements. And I do think, from what we've seen so far out of Marcel, out of Toyshirt, out of Betcher, Jerry's still out on JGR, and I think Horn has looked good in the 2 games that we've seen from him. I do think that we have upgraded. Like I legitimately think we've upgraded, and what I want to see is I want to see Celio cook in this team, right? I want to see him as a late game sub and be with 2 or 3 other guys that have the same kind of thought process he has for where the ball should go and how to interplay. And I want to see Tomas Ostrak in this team. Like, really bad. I want to see Tomas Ostrak in this team. They're going to be back in the spring. Like, well, ish. Ostrak earlier than Celio, but I mean, we have Klaus back and we have Alm back, and like that's great. And I think the team needs to make a decision about Nielsen.
I think the team needs to make a decision about Nielsen, and I think we need to be very cognizant of what we do with these players moving into the next season, because we have a lot of guys that are MLS starter caliber that are not going to be starters for our team.
I would agree with that. And the other issue that we have at the moment is we do have a lot of guys with options. And of those guys with options, many of them are people that we signed out of City 2 this spring and summer. And I'm not necessarily confident that the team is ready for them to actually be on first team contracts. And I don't think that the team is done giving up on them. Like, I think they're still wanting to develop these guys. So they're going to have to figure that out. Like Michael Vincel, you and I have been talking since February that this year he should have been loaned probably to a USL championship team. Like, that would have been a really good move for him this year. And if we're not going to, start him or play him regularly at the first team level, then hopefully next year they do. Like, I think he is deserving of a first team contract, and I think that they have a mind of him for the future. Well, he needs tougher competition than City 2. Like he is so clearly better than everyone else that he's playing with when he's out at City 2.
Yeah, they keep, oh man, our City 2 team's cooking, right? If you follow City 2 on social media. Well, yeah, because we have a bunch of USL championship caliber players.
Yes.
That need to be loaned out to USL championship teams to get the minutes and time they need. And because we had so many depth issues and so many injuries, we didn't, because we needed to be able to move them back and forth.
Yes.
I mean, that's all it is.
Yeah, and I mean, we don't know if some of these guys are really going to stick at the MLS level, but like, you can put them in USL championship for a year, get them uncomfortable, get them out trying in a new environment, better competition, let them grow. Like I think that Vincel deserves that and needs that. I think Johnny Klein is probably worth more to this team on vibes than he is as a player, and I think that a large part of that is his size. What
are you talking about?
He's a big guy.
He had a header for a goal. He's an aerial threat.
That was awesome. He is, I think, technically pretty good, especially for City 2, and I think he's quick enough for MLS. The problem is that he's just way too undersized at that level. I don't think loaning him is the right answer for him, but like, also we're now taking up a first team roster slot for him. Like, I could see them not taking his option just because it's a first team slot, and like he's not going to develop much farther beyond where he's at right now. I don't think. I know he's still pretty young,
And
but
he's not that young though. He's what, 24, 25 now?
I, I was thinking 23, 24, but 24 is not young. 24 is like the beginning of the peak for a lot of players, right?
Yeah, I was like 24 to 27 is usually kind of you're hitting your peak years for most soccer players.
Right.
And so, what, where do you fall with that? I'm Googling him to get his age. He'll be 25 in November.
Yeah. So there you go. He's basically already 25. Like you think about like just as like a comparison, he and Thomas Totland are the same age, right? And granted, Thomas Totland is no longer starting at the moment because Nowinski is. And we'll see kind of what they do this weekend for that right back position. But like Thomas Totland had a very, very good season until it got hot, basically.
So there is a month's difference in age. Johnny Klein is a month older than Celio. Granted, Celio just had this injury, but if you had to pick one of them,
Celio,
like there's no doubt who you're taking.
Celio, I think, is a guy that they were like, even despite his age, that I think they were thinking that they were viewing him as a developed type of guy, that like he had room to grow with confidence, with creativity, with being a little bit more like basically what I think Celio really needed when he got to MLS was learning when he needed to be more disciplined. Basically, he wasn't good enough technically to just roll on creativity alone, right? He needed to learn when to be more disciplined, and I think we've seen that over the last year and a half prior to his injury. God, I'm going to be so happy to see him play next year.
So this goes back to if assuming they buy Betcher, because he's on loan with option to buy.
Correct.
Horn's on loan with the option to buy too, correct?
That is also correct, yes.
So assuming you purchase both of those contracts, because they've more or less, they're making it look like they're going to. How do you, they've shown that they really like, that they're kind of leaning towards a 4-2-2-2 or a 4-2-3-1. Your two in the back are going to be Durkin and Leuven. So who do you put up top for your top four as starters? It's real easy with two. Toyshirt's got to be there. Marcel Hartel's got to be there. So that leaves you two spots.
So it also kind of depends how you view the team and the formation. So one thing I noticed, they didn't do it last week, but they did it against the Galaxy. They actually came out in a 4-1-4-1 once they brought Alm in. And they brought Leuven up into the second line of four, and then Alm was on the far right, and then you had Klaus above them. I thought that was a really interesting look. I don't know if it's the right look for us, but I thought it was interesting, something that we had not done in our brief history. As far as your attackers go, we've seen Klaus and Betcher work pretty well together so far. You can start both of them at striker. Obviously, some point soon within the next, you have to imagine next year Glover is going to be pushing for first team minutes, right? That's the path he should be on. And I know that they want to be cautious with him and not put too much on him, but like he should be on that path to where soon we are beginning to see him at the first team level. But I think that's probably what you do. You can move Toyshirt up if you need to. You can move a few guys in different places. I think your other two, though, are going to be, and I don't even know if it's going to be a 4-2-2-2. I think it's going to be a 4-2-3-1 with Betcher kind of moving up and back and being very fluid. And I think you have Toyshirt on one side and Marcel on the other is what you're normally going to see.
Yeah, I think it's kind of a cross between a 4-2-3-1 and a 4-2-2-2 with Betcher and Klaus kind of up and back a lot. I think what I struggle with most with that, and this is not a knock against it, because again, I think those guys are all studs. Is Alm is somebody to me who needs to be in your lineup.
Yeah,
our team is better for it when he is.
I agree.
And again, if he's your first sub, he's your first sub. I get it, right? But then you've also got, so now you're saying, okay, so who's your first sub? Is it Celio? Is it Indy? Is it Alm? Is it Ostrak? Is it, I mean, like, you have all these guys that they've, and it's great to have them all there, and it's great to have options, but what about minutes?
Right. There's your 4 subs right there, right? Like there's 4 of your 5 subs immediately. I do think that you can make the case that Alm comes in and Betcher comes out of your starting lineup. Because then Betcher can be your late striker sub, because Klaus, in most games, Klaus really starts to taper off after 60, 65 minutes. And Betcher, like, especially if he only has to go for 25 to 30, like, he can just go, right? The guy's an Energizer Bunny. So I do think that that's probably the option to get Alm in. That is where I lean probably a little bit more, is having Alm in and not Betcher. But it just kind of depends on formationally what you want to do. If you put Alm in, I think they've typically put Toyshirt in the center and Marcel on the left. And I've kind of liked that look so far.
I've been okay with it, and I think it's been fine. The thing that I struggle the most with, and don't get me wrong, Hartle's played great, is that when he became very, very successful and became the offensive difference maker that he was, that we signed him for, was when he was playing the 10.
Right. I do think that they are probably using him as a bit of a 10.
I think they're using him more of like a false 10, because he inverts a lot off the left.
Yeah, right.
So I'm not saying that it's not happening.
Right.
But part of me wonders, if at some point we see Toyshirt at the 9.
Yes.
With Hartle at the 10, with Alm, on the right, Indy on the left, something to that extent.
Yeah.
If Betcher and Klaus, again, you'd have, I don't see where they're going to bench both Betcher and Klaus to start a game. But I would be intrigued, maybe not this season, but next season, if you get fixture congestion, at any point.
Or injuries, right? Injuries happen.
Yeah, or injuries, if something like that. I'd just be intrigued to see how that would look.
Yeah. I mean, it logically makes sense that is a lineup you could run and be confident in, right? Like, I would not feel
Celio
bad about that lineup.
when he's back and healthy, right? And you put Celio on the left, Alm on the right, and Hartle at the 10.
Yeah. Like, you're okay with that look. My one issue with Celio and Alm is I don't think that they take a lot of shots. And I think that to maximize Marcel's ability, you want to kind of put him around guys, or put guys around him that are willing to just one time a lot of shots, right? Because I think Marcel's best ability is not really his goal scoring, like scoring goals on himself. I think it's assisting. I think he can, finish and score really good goals, but I think he's probably better at setting the goal up than he is at scoring.
I mean, he had his last season, he had 19 goals and 10 assists.
Yeah. And a lot of those goals were pens too, though.
But a lot of those goals, a lot of them, if you watch what they are, they're not him, like, he's not like Leuven, right? You expect Leuven to like rip a shot from the top of the box with a rocket. That's not Hartle. What Hartle does is he creates space, blaze it off to somebody, and then makes a run, and it's just, I mean, we saw it against was it Galaxy, and it's just, ball comes back to him, and everyone's like, wow, what a finish. I'm like, no, that's just what he does. He knows how to redirect a ball where he wants it.
To be fair, it really was quite
a great finish.
Like,
no.
Let's not
he did it,
undersell that.
But I'm not trying to undersell his finish, but what I am saying is that, like, that's who he is, right?
Right.
So like that's what I expect to see from him in those situations, I guess, is what I'm getting at. Not to say not to say like, oh wow, like it wasn't great. No, it was, but like that's what I expect of him, right? Is he did the thing, he played the ball, he made the run to the right spot, and then was right there ready for it when it came back to him.
I mean,
and I could see him and Celio, especially the way Celio loves to drive to the like end, kind of that end line between the 16 and the 6 and the 18.
Yeah.
Right? Hartle's going to be there.
Yeah. One thing I do want to say, other than just, I love, as they say, match day Marcel. So the MLS chooses the goal of the week based off of a Twitter poll, which is, as everyone knows, the most scientific way of making any decisions. And Betcher's goal was one of the options this week, probably because there was just like nothing else. And of the 4 goals, his was clearly just like the worst. Like there was nothing special about his goal, right? It was a goal. But naturally, St. Louis fans, if we kind of like rooting for our guys on Twitter polls, so Betcher won goal of the week for that. And like if you watch the highlights, the other goals were way better. But Betcher won, and I hope he gets.
It wasn't close.
No, it was not, and it almost never is. But you think they execute that option next June for Betcher?
I think current state, I think they do, because I think he brings something to this team that they needed.
Right.
But I also think it depends, because if Celio's doing really well and on his way back and Ostrak looks good, I could also see them not.
Yeah.
Because they have 2 guys who can do the job. Yeah. So it with it running through June, that's a perfect window to essentially bridge the gap in the rehab for those 2 guys. And I think that's why they did it the way they did.
It 100%
because they'll have an idea. And and again, back to Lutz, just understanding what he needs.
Right. It gives him an off ramp to make that decision in a year if that's the decision he needs to make. But also, he can execute that buy option if say Celio doesn't rebound as quickly as we want, or at all. Like that was a nasty leg injury. Like I have no idea what his touch is going to look like when he comes back. Ostrak had a major surgery on his ankle as well, right? Like we don't know what he'll look like when he comes back. Like
no, it's great. And again, you have Lutz, and you have wonderful. You have a great team. You have a great front office, and they plan ahead. They look to the future, and you have a great ownership group with Carolyn Kendall and company, who allow their teams to do its best and allow their teams to stay and thrive in a city that loves them and cares about them and want to put a good quality product on the field. I mean, it's not like some owners, who purposely put shitty teams on the field, drive down ticket sales so they can move their team somewhere else because they think, it's a bigger market and more revenues available. Like some individuals may or may not have done.
Certain individuals who will be named shortly, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, no, he's always named. But as those of you who are aware, Stan Kroenke did exactly that, right? I mean, and I think that's what a lot of fans are also scared about with the Cardinals right now. And again, something we'll talk more about is, are the DeWitts purposely doing this? And I don't think that's true. But are they purposely, not putting a competitive team out in hopes to get ready to relocate or to sell the franchise? I don't think that's happening. But, nobody wants to go through what we went through with the NFL and Stan Kroenke ever again. Because honestly, we all know that we don't want to deal with another owner like that. St. Louis doesn't need another breakup like that. And we all know Stan Kroenke's a douchebag. So with that, Stan Kroenke, we hate you, and good night, everyone.